Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2025 IDD Topics and Trends. This is our third installment of this year's IDD Topics and Trends. While everyone's getting situated, I just wanted to um, bring up that we have had 4 years of this. So we have many, many resources on our YouTube channel with experts just like the one we have today. If you're interested in viewing those past webinars, please go to our YouTube channel. We also do transcripts on those if you would like to read about it. Those are on our website. So you can go ahead and head over there if you're interested in hearing more from experts in the IDD space. Um, awesome. Okay, it looks like we have some more people joining us. Thank you all for being here. Tonight's installment is exploring inclusive housing and community approach, support, choice, and belonging. Lisa Zuegel, founder of Constellation Community Living and champion for inclusion. We're very excited to start tonight's webinar. But before we do that, we have a few housekeeping things. For those who are new to Zoom, you are currently muted for this event. But if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. You can either interact with hosts and panelists, or you can interact with attendees and us. So if you're looking for community or if you have any questions, please feel free to use that chat function. We'd love to hear from you. Again, as I said, you can totally switch between them, all panelists or all panelists and attendees at the bottom in your chat function. Before we hear from our panelists, we'd like to hear from you guys. So real quick, we have a small poll for you guys. It will be 3 questions. We just want to know how you heard about us. What is your relationship to someone with an intellectual or developmental disability? And what is your biggest concern when it comes to future housing and care planning for your loved one with IDD? If you could go ahead, take a minute to answer that poll, that would be amazing. We love to hear from you guys because it informs our next webinars. We have one more installment of the 2025, and then we'll be back next year. So please answer those questions so we know what you guys want to hear. I'll give it another 20 seconds. Go ahead and answer those questions. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for answering. Amazing. Okay, last but not least, we have a Q&A function as well for this webinar. The second part of this webinar is going to be a Q&A. So if you're interested in hearing more from Dana or Lisa, if you have specific questions, please feel free to use that function any time throughout the webinar. So ask questions at any moment and we will get to them at the end. Okay. Thank you all for participating in the polls. To start us off today, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director since 2007, Dana Hooper. Dana Hooper has been the Executive Director of Life Services Alternatives for the past 17 years, but his journey started many years ago when his son Brent was diagnosed with an intellectual disability. Over the years, he has become involved in many areas of the IDD world. He became a leader in our community working with government and nonprofits such as Branch Services, which he was on the board of, Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired, also on the board, the State Department of Developmental Services, and the San Andreas Regional Center, where he was also on the board, and also where his son Brent is a client in supported living. It also led him to his leadership role at LSA, where he can make a difference every day in the lives of the individuals that LSA serves.
Well, thank you, Leela. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that you all are joining us tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome Lisa. Lisa is somebody that I've known for the past 15 years. She's part of a group of moms that I affectionately refer to as the Mountain View Moms. And I met her on my journey. And she will bring some very interesting perspectives tonight. She builds communities rooted in passion, courage, and meaningful connection. She is the founder of Constellation Community Living, a movement inspired by her son and dedicated to creating inclusive spaces where everyone belongs. With a degree in industrial engineering and decades of experience leading teams and facilitating global leadership programs, she blends systems thinking with a heartfelt commitment to building a more connective, inclusive future. Lisa and her husband Jim have lived in Mountain View, Los Altos area for 4 decades and have contributed in creating community. Lisa gets her inspiration from her children, her daughter Devon, who is building a walkable, multi-generational village in Sonoma County, and her son Jeffrey, who is a North Star for creating an inclusive community in Mountain View.
Dana, it's so fun to be here with you today and think back to over a decade ago when I got to meet you, and you have since been just a wonderful mentor and guide through this journey. So good to be here with you and with everyone on the call.
Thank you. So the format for this section is fireside question. I ask the questions, Lisa gets to answer. We try and make it interactive, and then once we're wrapped up, we'll have the more formal Q&A session where we can address your questions. So let's kick that off, Lisa. Inclusive housing can mean different things to different people. What does it mean to you? How do you define it?
Well, it's a great starting point and a real truth that it does mean something different, to each of us. And as I think about it, I like to get back to the real basics. So what does that word inclusion mean? So we kind of, toss that around, inclusive housing, inclusive living, but what does it mean to really feel included? So Dana, maybe you and I can think a little bit about that. When have we felt included? And we can, ask those listening maybe to just take a pause here and think about, when do you really feel included, when you're in that flow of being in a community and a connection? So I'm going to share a couple of examples of that. First, like for myself, what it means to me is I think about the home that Jim and I have set up with our son's care team in Mountain View. We call it the Star House. It's on Star Way, and it is a place where I feel very much included as a parent and as kind of an expert in terms of Jeffrey's needs, that my voice can be heard and incorporated, and I can hear other voices, and we can have deep conversation about how to set up the home to be the best it can be, and also have very meaningful personal relationships with everyone who's in the home. So it truly feels like a family, and that I can completely be myself, and my hope and dream is not just Jeffrey, but everybody in that house can feel like they can be themselves. So that's how it feels like to me. And while Jeffrey, who's just about to turn 26, and he has quite a bit of language, although it can be a little hard to understand, I call him my 6-foot Curious George. When I look at Jeffrey and I'm with Jeffrey, and I try to envision what does inclusion feel like to him, I think the best example that I can share right now is that he has one of those sort of third places, and it's walking distance from his home. It's the El Camino YMCA, part of the YMCA of Silicon Valley. And when he walks into the doors of the YMCA, the people behind the desk are ready for a fist bump or a handshake, psych. They know that that's Jeffrey, and Jeffrey knows that they know him. And when he's in the pool, whether it's a good day or whether it's a bad day, they love having Jeffrey there and supporting him. And he loves his lifeguards, and he talks about them all the time. So those are just a couple examples for me. Dana, anything maybe you want to add on when you feel included? What are sort of the elements of that?
Sure. I think you kind of hit on it. It is a feeling, and when you do feel, listened to, respected, heard, included, that's a very good feeling. And and I guess being the, having all those things apply on your bad days as well as your good days is, well, maybe that's stretching a little bit, but I mean, I think this is why um, it's important for adults with disabilities. Um, and and I think, yeah, I mean, how about you? I mean, why is it important?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
think?
because I think, as I've reflected and, Layla was so kind to say I'm an expert. I have a lot of experience. I've, experienced it with Jeffrey and Jeffrey's home. I've gone to many other homes to kind of get that sense of what it feels like. And what I realized is, we all need inclusion. We asked, asking all of you to reflect on that. We all need that, and we all want to set up the lives around us so that we have that sense of belonging. And why it's so important with people with disabilities, it's just as important, as to you and me, but they often need help or help for us to partner with them to have that scaffolding, sort of have the system in place to be able to build what it takes. So you asked me to define, in my own words, what inclusive housing is. And maybe what I can do is open that up to say, what is inclusive living? And I think it's being part of a community that's built on how I see it, really three main elements. So being part of an inclusive living community means that there is a sense of connection. So connection to others in the community, whether it's team members that you're working with, whether it's housemates, whether it's, the lifeguards, whether it's going to the Safeway where they know Jeffrey, it's those connections, and it's really about weaving together people, places, activities to have that sense of connection. So that's really the first pillar in my mind of what is inclusive housing. The second, in my mind, it's another C, and that's around choice. And that's really where we get to the idea of, especially for individuals with disabilities, we want to make sure that as we plan their living environment with them, or as they plan and we support them in that, we are giving them choice of who to live with, choice of what activities engage in, how they might schedule, what their home feels like. And summarizing that as them being able to really follow their own star and have that sense of agency that they get to decide. And then the third element, as I think about defining inclusive housing, is about the compassion. And that actually is something that, you work on and you try to build that empathy muscle that we each have. But what happens, in these environments is I think that we actually raise the tide of compassion, not just within the home, but within the neighborhood and within the broader community. So that's kind of how I look at it, are those three C's: connections, choice, compassion, and how it's critical for every single one of us on the call here today. And we have a job to do, which is to be a partner with those with disabilities in helping to establish that type of living ecosystem with them.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I think it's another word that I would have for that is acceptance. Um, acceptance of ourselves and others, and um, but I'm interested too, and what's really inspired you to go beyond, building an inclusive community for your son, to being advocating for inclusive housing for, adults with developmental disabilities, and, going beyond just your own little world.
Well, I'm going to start with a place that is interesting. I think as I think about it, I have been working at one company for the past 40 years, and it feels like a family and a community to me there. And I've learned a lot. I'm in a leadership development role, and I've led a global program where we really build a community of leaders. So I think that that sort of toolkit of how do you work within an organization, how do you work within a community and build that community, is that I can take a lot of the learnings from that. And I think each of us, who are here today, you can think about like what's in your toolkit of experiences and what can you bring. So I come with that toolkit. I come with the toolkit of systems thinking from my education as well. But what has really been the fire that has lit this flame of building inclusion, Dana, it's really people like you. So, we met you along the journey, but I want to back up in time a little bit further to some of the earlier people before Dana even met you, and show how sort of the breadcrumbs briefly along the way brought this to be so clear to me. Like, it's hard for me to see it a different way now because of the journey that Jeffrey, Jim, Devin, and I have lived together. So the starting point was we were very blessed to be connected with a developmental pediatrician, Dr. Ann Parker. And I don't think she would mind if I show this picture. I actually have this picture on my desk. Ann Parker is in the Berkeley area, developmental pediatrician, and you could tell she's not your ordinary doctor. We left her office and went and played basketball so she could really see how Jeffrey was doing. And what Dr. Parker said is that the only thing that we should be keeping as our beacon is to think about how Jeffrey can be a valued part of his community. That's that C, that's making the choice, that's the contribution part, that Jeffrey brings value. He has agency, and if we set him up for success, he's going to be able to bring even more value and grow and be more content himself. The second sort of breadcrumb along the way that found us when things kind of felt like they were falling apart, and then this other beacon came into our lives. It was called the Friendship Circle Buddies. And many people within our South Bay community here have been very fortunate to have their children and now adults too matched up with buddies. These are teen volunteers in high school who dedicate their time to really getting to know our kids. And in our case, we have lifelong relationships with about 12 volunteers who I actually reached out to. They may even be on some of them on this call today. And they provided inspiration in two ways. One is I saw them set up activities with Jeffrey that were so creative looking, and I thought that they had figured out these activities. And when I asked them, they both said, and both times when I remember this happening, I actually have photos of this, oh, Jeffrey taught us how to play that game. Think about that. And Jeffrey did not have that much language back then. The other thing that I learned from them is, I felt in a way like I personally was falling apart as a parent with all of this going on, but they brought community to us. We made dinner for them. We all sat around and we had a true community. And I wanted to replicate that for Jeffrey. My husband, Jim, and I both wanted to replicate that. And Devin, we loved that. And we wanted that feel to continue forever. And then Dana, you came into the picture with the Mountain View moms and dads, about 10 families that came together. And what I think is really important there is solving this issue of inclusion has to be done in community. Well, it turns out that of those families, only some of them we are working with here in Mountain View, but we still stay in touch. We still learn from each other. And big shout out, to what they are all doing. And in fact, a couple of them are living in LSA homes, and they're those adults are just really thriving there. Two more people who have been a beacon for me. One is a wonderful teacher, Pam Joy, who started All's School. And she shared a powerful truth with me, is that when individuals with disabilities have accommodations made, often those accommodations help all of us. I'm sure we can all think of examples of that. And I will tell you that one of the biggest ones that's concrete for me is that our El Camino YMCA has 3 changing rooms for family changing rooms because Jeffrey inspired Juan Gomez to build them out when they had the remodel, and everybody benefits from them. And then the last inspiration is that my dear friend Mercy Ford and I went to, she brought me, so shout out to Mercy, to a wonderful workshop from Hope Services with this gentleman, Al Condeluci, who talks about social capital and how real value comes from the social connections that we have. And Al gave us all a very practical model, which I think we could all apply. So how do you want to build inclusion? You find out what a person is interested in. Jeffrey, swimming. You find a place where he could do that, the YMCA, which is a 10-minute walk away. You find out what are the social expectations for participating there. And then you get the local gatekeepers prepared and helping you bring them in, i.e. the wonderful lifeguards and staff at the pool. So this is how those steps, if we follow those, we can help introduce bringing our partner youth or adults with disabilities into the community. We can partner to support them so that they can be more successful in the community and go to places that you and I want to go.
Excellent. I mean, what are some of the challenges and gaps you see in current housing options? I mean, there's a number of different kinds of options available, but is there some common shortcomings that you see?
Yeah, I think we all are feeling that right now, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the concerns we all have, about finances for the future with the current legislation, in progress, and kind of some of those unknowns. So, sometimes it feels like the Titanic is sinking, and what are we doing on the deck? But on the other hand, I feel it's really critical, even with limited funds and how hard it is to make something happen, that we figure out within these constraints how to overcome them. Dana, is it correct to say about 75 to 80% of individuals with IDD have a family member providing care back in their regular home? Is that sort of the statistics?
Yeah, but of individuals who are over 21, I think that's a pretty accurate number, and that percentage are still living at home.
Yeah, so then the question would be, well, why is that? And again, I'm speaking purely from my experience and going out and speaking with individuals with different family members, going to different sites where there are living arrangements. I mean, yesterday, for example, I was up at Sunflower Hill, and I understand, it's a low income housing apartment building. It's wonderful, but there's 30 people who can live there, right? And they're going to probably age in place there. And so, there are definitely a limited number of affordable options in every way, right? And so that's, of course, one of the challenges. The challenge that I think I can more personally speak to is the challenge of letting go as a parent. And so this may or may not apply to you, those of you who are listening. You may be, I'm ready, I just need to find something, right? Like that might be part of it. And I think we all get to that at some point. But I also think that most of us go through that place of, can I find an option where, especially my child who has very significant developmental differences, and Jeffrey does. I mean, Jeffrey actually has 2-to-1 care in his home. I mean, he has significant level of need. And so how can I let go and have him leave, my safe space and go live somewhere else? It took a long time for me to be ready for that. I think it was easier for my husband to get to that place. But for me as mom, it was really, really hard, to get there. And it was a bit of a leap of faith. But Dana, as you know, I think one of the things that really accelerated my thinking is extrapolating based on seeing friends who maybe got ill and then couldn't care for their kids. And I did not want to be in that position. You know, Jim and I wanted to ensure Jeffrey was in a place where he could thrive without us. We had to feel that he could do that. But I will tell you the thing that I did not expect, did not understand, was the upside. So remember, we talked about the connections and the choice and the compassion. Jeffrey, being in his own home, has created an environment where he has a remarkable team around him who can figure things out better than Jim and I can, and how to support Jeffrey. Jeffrey's language has improved. His ability to do things with minimal support, some of his daily living has improved. So many things. And the most important is that his challenging behaviors, which when he moved into the house, it was unbearable. It was unbearable even the first year and a half in his house was during COVID. But his behaviors have all but disappeared now. And I attribute that to the fact that he has a sense of agency. He's calling his own shots. He doesn't have mom and dad telling him what to do. And so I that's the main one I can speak to. But of course, the affordability and finding options that don't necessarily require a big buy-in, we have to make those options available.
Yeah, I think there's some real lessons learned there, Lisa, and we as parents always want, to keep our special children safe. And at what point does safe hold them back, right? And some of you know me, have heard my story when Brent started living in his own house with a couple of roommates, and he's probably living there, for a month, and he comes home on Friday night for pizza, and we have his favorite pizza, and he has pizza, and then he goes home. He's like, okay, he's made the transition. This is not his home anymore, and he wants to go back to his home. So I mean, maybe a little bit of a pivot here to Constellation Living, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about, what that is or what you hope it to be.
Thanks, Dana. So this idea of Constellation Community Living has been percolating up ever since the Mountain View moms got together, and dads, moms and dads, families got together. We actually met at the YMCA and put all of our ideas together. And at that time, that whole group of people were actually living in the Mountain View, Palo Alto, Sunnyvale area. And the idea was, what if we could kind of all work together? What if all of our kids, adult kids, lived in a home, whatever that was? It could be an apartment, it could be a house. Today it could be an ADU. But even though if they weren't all living next to each other, could we still operate as a community within a community? And that's the vision, is creating not a community that's based on brick and mortar. And there's marvelous, marvelous communities around the whole Bay Area. And I've visited many of them. Like I said yesterday, Sunflower Hill, Coastal Haven, Common Roots Farm. It's remarkable. There's Cedars of Marin, there's Clearwater Ranch. There's many site-based solutions that are fabulous and offer a great solution. But I think we all know that living here in well, not all of you live here, but for me, living here in the Mountain View, Los Altos, Palo Alto, Sunnyvale area, I don't think we're going to find a place where we can set up 30 people living with each other on the same site. So the concept of Constellation is, can we create that community within a community and still get the benefits of being a community, just not all being right next to each other? So I talked about the connections, the choice, the compassion. We are starting to get together, a design team, Dana, and I've already started this conversation, and we're finding some other like-minded individuals. And if you're on this call and you hear this and want to be a part of it, to come together and figure out what could this community here in the north part of the San Andreas Regional Center catchment, which is one of the pricier areas, right? If we can solve it here, what can we do? Can we create one of these constellations right here in this area? And you might say, well, what's happened so far? So what's happened so far is we have two very clear elements of the constellation together and more. So the two we have together, one is Jeffrey's house. As I said, it's on Starway. It's called the Star House. And it is an example of inclusive living for an individual with very high level IDD needs who really has a strong sense of community and love for his home. And a big shout out to Dana and Layla in preparation for this session who came out. The community wasn't there. I think you got to meet one of the housemates, but you know, you can tell it feels like a family. It feels like a social place. The neighbors know Jeffrey. And then we also have partnerships, as I said, with the Y. It's a very strong partnership. We now have a second Sunday swim for all, pool fun for all, that is in place on the calendar, again, inspired by Jeffrey. In addition, there are, of course, the Magical Bridge playgrounds that are already in place, and there is another Y in Palo Alto as well. So if we start kind of like thinking about these stars in our constellation and how can we work together and design an opportunity for individuals living in whatever choice of housing makes sense for them, but that they can have the connection, the choice, the compassion, and come together and work as a true community and have that sense of belonging. That's what we're after. And we're going to take the next 6 months to figure out this design. So if you're a partner in any way would like to be, please reach out to me. We want to get you on board.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's a fascinating concept. And I thought to myself, you know, and we talked a little bit about this when Layla and I came up and visited. So all of a sudden, you know, if LSA had a home in Mountain View, you know, it's just another one of the stars in the constellation. And just like today in all of our homes, for people to really be included in their communities, it goes beyond the walls of the, as you said, brick and mortar. And so that would make it potentially much more exciting for the people who live there. You know, the connections to the Y, obviously the existing of Magical Bridge, which is really is taking this same concept of it's better for all. It's not just about you know, making it accessible for a few more people. It's about making it inclusive and accessible for all. So that's fascinating. Um, yeah, uh, I guess the question that pops to me is, so I'm always thinking about making things a reality, but I mean, what are some steps that people can take, that we can take to go down that road together?
Yeah, so if for those who would be interested in starting a constellation, and I've generally have thought about, you know, a Star House is right in the heart of Mountain View, but if we go north and we go south, easy to get to Palo Alto, easy to get to Sunnyvale, right? We're looking at ideally sort of a 10-minute either walk or a drive, you know, and once we have really all these automated cars driving around, it's going to be a lot easier, right? So we can be thinking in the future for that too. But if we look at that space, if you're in that area and want to get on board, reach out to Dana and me. You can reach out to me. I know, Dana, you said you're heading out for a little bit, so please reach out to me. And the intention would be to really create a true design for making this viable from a social, from a financial point of view. So how many people would need to be in the community? What would be the number of agencies that might, you know, get involved? What kind of sort of governance might there be of the community? And what I'm starting to do, as I said yesterday, I went out to Sunflower Hill. I was recently at Coastal Haven, is let's learn from the establishments that are site-based. They have figured a lot of things out, right? And how do they set up that infrastructure of support? And what if they were doing what they were doing, but just distributed? What would be different, right? And what would be the same? And so it's really looking at that system, that design that we would create together. And for those of you who aren't in that area, but want to do something similar to this, we would love to partner with you too, and maybe work on this in parallel. And if you want to start small, the steps that my husband and I and these other families took, I think one was to find like-minded families that, like right now it's a little bit harder for us because when the kids are younger, you've got kind of your community and they're all hanging out together. And so I would say start like finding people who are like-minded that live near you that want to build an inclusive community. You could also, that your child could move somewhere else potentially, but there's a lot of value in growing up where they were staying where they grew up. And then secondly, look for your obvious partners. If you're near one of the YMCA's, talk to me. We'll figure out, like, I know this is a high priority for a YMCA. There's 11 of them in the Bay Area. So, we can collaborate together with the Y, or you might find another partner in your community. It does take being a little bit of a squeaky wheel and, conveying what your adult child needs. Or, there might be someone, I just want to be respectful, someone on the phone here who is that adult child who's figuring out how to set up something inclusively. So we want to involve you. With Jeffrey, it's a little bit harder, but would love self-advocates to help us build these partnerships as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether there's, organizations out there that could be, recruited or educated. I always think of community centers as, I mean, isn't that what they're for? But then, the reality is they seem to, run by their own idea of what they're there for.
Yeah,
But as a common meeting spot.
no, and I definitely a community center could be brought into the fold, as well. And it just takes that work. And I think if we go back to, the Al Condalusi, idea of the social capital and those 4 steps that I described, we need to like look at the community, who's in this community of adults with IDD, what are their interests, where does it worthwhile to build a partnership? I mean, the Y is an obvious place because like RY just put ping pong tables in, right? So there's always something going on, right? And a community center, likewise, there's so many activities. So we certainly can look. I also just want to do a quick call out. Hi, Janice. And Janice's daughter is in the studios, I think, and the studios are very close to the Star House. And it's an apartment building that has lots of individuals with IDD, and I'm excited for it to potentially become part of the Constellation. So lots of nice synergies here.
Yeah, fantastic. So it looks like we've got some questions coming, and why don't we'll kind of wrap it up and hand the torch back to Leela to go into the Q&A section. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for that insightful conversation. It was very interesting. It, made up of a lot of stories, which really touched my heart, as well as a lot of information. One thing that you said, Lisa, I think really struck me. You said it seemed like you were saying something like persistence is key when building, this housing, and I thought that was really, I think persistence is key when, advocating for accessibility in general, right? And I really thought that was very meaningful. So it seems like we have a few questions. Also, something that you said, I know Jeffrey gets 2-to-1, right? 2-to-1 staffing. And I thought that was a really cool kind of part of Constellation Community Living. It seems like it's very open to a lot of different abilities. And you were talking about his behaviors. I know one of our audience, or our when we go out to events, I know that's one of those dilemmas for a lot of families, right? Who have adult children with behaviors, right? It's hard to find that inclusive community for them. So yeah, that was really amazing. The questions we have, and again, I just wanted to reach out to the audience. Please add any questions you have in the Q&A. I see everyone's very excited about Lisa. I saw all the shout outs. It was very, very cool. One of the questions, what does meaningful connection look like in an inclusive housing setting? So, like in the house, how is that intentionally built and not just like assumed?
Yeah, and I can really only speak to the setup that we have, which is that how Jeffrey lives. And I think maybe what this would be a good place for me to show one of the pictures that I have of him in the house, because then you'll get a little bit a better sense. As I'm doing this, though, I have to also, I'm going to bring up this picture. Okay, here we go. I want to share a very important person in this picture, and that's my husband, Jim, who's been just an amazing partner in this. And when you talked about the persistence, Layla, the other thing that I think is really important is trying things out. And when we got the Mountain View, when the Mountain View moms happened and came together, and Dana became a mentor for us, it was really Jim who said, we just got to start doing this. He's like the doer. We just got to we got to find a house. We got to make this happen. We got to do this. And that's really true. You're going to get pushback. I've gotten pushback from some of our partners, and you just okay, well, I learned from that. Where can I go from here? But this is the front yard of Jeffrey's house. And he's got his amazing housemates, Lisa and Eric, and then the rest of the team here. So you got a little bit of a sense of, what it's like and where he is. This is kind of fun. This wonderful couple here just got married, and Jim and I got to go to their wedding. Very, very, very tiny wedding, but they're kind of like kids to us too. And yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful community. Just, truly full of love. And I guess I want to get back to that question of what does it look like? This is where my little hat of doing a lot of team facilitation and leadership came in, is how do we take this very truly, set of people with very, very different backgrounds and experiences? How do we bring them together? And so the house only works if you're not only helping to bring out the best in your child, but in all the people who are involved in it, where they know that they're valued and that they're trusted. And so it takes time. It's taken time. We were not here 5 years ago when we started, but we are here now. And I know when I first visited an LSA home, I felt that sense of family. There's another home that I visited up in Marin, and I saw photos, and I felt that sense of family. And if you come into the Star House, there's photos everywhere of the team, of team members, and creating that sense of family is what creates the connections. You truly have to care about everyone who's there and respect them and trust them.
Amazing. Dana, I wanted to kind of go to you for this question as well. I know being around the LSA homes, it feels like a true sense of community and family, as Lisa said. So, what are the building blocks for that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's certainly something that, we've always strived for. And I think where we got started was, with some core values. And one of them, is respect for each other. And with respect comes listening and, paying attention, to what people need and want. The other one is, to me, is including everybody in the conversation and making are having, I guess, the biggest possible vision for what family looks like. Um, so that meant certainly including that individual's family and extended friends in the conversation. Um, and and I guess this one has just always been important to me, which is, to be to be uh, tolerant of making mistakes and to work really hard to learn from them and to be better. And what that looks like in that kind of a home environment, I think is attention, paying attention to what it takes to make it a great place to live and how to um, build, build that community.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I see that every day. And I think it's a huge part of inclusive housing. I mean, we all want that the same thing, right? I want my housemates to respect me as well as all the other cornerstones. I see Lisa's Lisa's answering some of the questions. Did you want to answer that one out loud? I think some people wanted kind of a visual on that constellation on the Constellation Community Living. Do you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure, sure. And maybe while I'm bringing it up, Dana, could you just briefly describe residential care versus supported living? Uh, because I think that's something that would be helpful. Something that you helped me with 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the simple difference, and in Jeffrey's environment is supported living. My son lives in a home with a supported living, and it it sub separates the housing from the support, and so in that sense, the support is individualized. In Jeffrey's case, I mean, you mentioned that he has two staff. I don't know if that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but that's customized, and you you actually have an not for profit, or maybe it is for profit, but we'll say it's a not for profit supported living agency that actually is the structure through which that support is provided. In an LSA home, um, it's all combined in that it's typically a residential home intended for five individuals to live, and the support and the housing and transportation and everything is all kind of wrapped together. And um, so there are also those homes are, formally licensed and highly regulated, and you have this whole sense of how much, what is uh, the home targeted at in terms of need, and what kind of support levels are provided. A staffing ratio in a typical LSA home is two staff for five people. So that's a long ways from 1 to 1, or an even longer way from 1 to 2, two staff for every one. And in some of the homes, it might be three on a, PM shift, or in homes with higher needs for medical, it might be three, but um, it's always less than the number of people that are living there. Uh, so yeah, those are the basic differences. Um, and a lot of the um, I think as a parent, I liked the concept of supported living because it felt like I could customize, um, really nail what my son needed. And then I came to realize that then I had really had to work hard to get the social. and to get the community inclusion, because it was, it would be awful if you were a prisoner of your own home, even if you had tremendous support. That wasn't gonna, be enough. Um, and then I found with the LSA homes, you get uh, a lot of social interaction, that's kind of inherently built into having roommates. Um, so that's kind of the basic difference. In both cases, you want it to be inclusive, and you want, um, it to be right for for the individual and their needs and wants. But you get there in different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the choice, right? It's where can each person thrive and be their best selves. And I'm always curious, like, how would Jeffrey do in a residential care home? I mean, he does great at his day program. It's a lot of stimulation for him. And when he comes home, I think he likes to be the king of his couch. And he doesn't always like someone else sitting on the couch with him. It's very funny. It's kind of part of the joke. But it's hard to say. I until you try it, right? We're back to, you got to try some things out. So let me just quickly share the picture that we have, the visual of what a constellation could consist of. This is just a example. So in this picture, we're only showing what is the brick and mortar, right? We're not showing what the care is. We're showing just what the brick and mortar is. And so when we originally got the Star House going, it was set up like this. We were envisioning that we're going to have 2 adults with IDD living there. We may in the future, but now we currently have 1 adult with IDD and 2 adults who are caregivers, housemates. Just a wonderful trio of 3 housemates, including Jeffrey. In the future, we would love to see an LSA home, somewhere in this constellation. As I mentioned, there are the studios apartments that are just down the street. And that's another, a logical place to look for potential people who want to be part of the constellation. And now, thanks to rules and regulations becoming, a little bit looser, the possibility of parents building an ADU, or there will be more ADUs that can be rented, that's another possible type of brick and mortar. The caregiving is a whole other layer of question, and it's something that we would need to figure out. But if you take a look at, any of these brick and mortar solutions, that even if they're on one site, for example, Coastal Haven has 3 supported living service providers providing service there, right? So it's not like a one size fits all for everybody. SLS itself requires some flexibility, and Constellation provides that in terms of the different types of homes, provides more options for people to be able to be a part of the community with different levels of investment needed.
That's amazing. That's awesome. It was nice to see how many different solutions, or not solutions, options there are, right? It feels like there could be a fit for everybody, right? Which I'm guessing is the purpose, and making it as accessible as possible is always, amazing. It looks like Jennifer has a question. What happens in a supported living situations when a parent dies? Who ensures continued excellent care?
Dana, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So, so in theory, you set up a situation with a supported living agency that's not dependent on you, the parent. And I would never want to say this, but hopefully, you know, it doesn't miss a beat, right? And of course, a parent would be missed and, all of that. But the whole idea is to not have the living situation depend on the parent. And that way, as the parent ages and eventually passes, it won't interfere with the life. And we all want our offspring to prosper and to be better versions of ourselves. So hopefully that's why picking carefully, the agency, or in the case of a residential home, the nonprofit, you know, um, it's important to look at the organization and make sure that it's going to be around and that it's well run and, all those kinds of things. And then a backup plan, I think, is that, is a regional center. And in a worst case scenario, it might require a new supported living agency, or maybe a change in the service provider over time, that may or may not be related to the parent, passing.
Yeah. And maybe I'm just going to add, Jennifer, your question is exactly why I'm my husband and I are thinking about this concept of the constellation, because we as parents need a community, we need all the pieces of the system to be in place as best as we can do. Like, that's our responsibility as parents. We each have to do the best we can do to get things set up in the most reliable way possible. And if we do that in community, we're going to do a better job of it, because we'll have other people to kind of talk to. And, whether it's family members or really close family friends, that if they understand the whole system as well, then they can help to make sure that there isn't a missed beat. And there's a lot of work to do, right? And that's why I don't think it's never too soon to start thinking about these things. And then the bottom line is we all just do the best we can do, right? We can't we can't control the future, so we just do the best we can and take it one step at a time. But if we do it in community, it'll be a lot more fun, and I think it'll be a lot more effective too.
Amazing. Okay. Oh, did you have something else, Dana?
No, I think that was well
Yeah.
said. It's it's something that we all parents, worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was very well said too, Lisa. I know that's on a lot, most all parents' mind, all parents of people with disabilities' mind. So thank you for ending, tying it up with a little bow. It was great. Okay, well, thank you all for your questions and joining us for this evening's IDD topics and trends with Lisa Zuegel. As always, keep in touch, but keep in touch also with Lisa. I've seen a lot of people, asking for her contact. So here it is. We haven't been hiding it. I know she dropped it in the chat a couple times too, as well as her LinkedIn is on the screen and in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to her if you have any further questions on Constellation Community Living or inclusive housing, as well as contact us. Visit our website. Again, go look for some of our other IDD topics and trends. That'll be on our YouTube as well as on our website. Or if you have any questions at all, you can email us at the email on the screen. And of course, follow us on social media. We have one more installment of this webinar series, and it's actually, we're skipping a Tuesday. So don't tune in next Tuesday, tune in the Tuesday afterwards. It'll be July 29th at 6:30 p.m. and we're talking about self-determination. It's a practical conversation for families, including a parent advocate as well as a self-advocate. So please tune in for that if you're interested. And then, of course, come see us in person at Run Home. So this is our 5K, 10K walk, run, cheer, roller skate, bike. Come and support. Come cheer us on at the end of the finish line. It starts at 9 a.m. on September 6th. Register at the QR code on the screen or, again, on our website. And thank you all for joining us. Join us again, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Thank you. Bye.